The Portland Trail Blazers, they finished with the 8th seed. They finished 35 and 39, so below 500. They lost to the Lakers in the first round. Dame solidified himself as a top 10 player last year. He played phenomenal in the bubble and the whole season pretty much. The storyline for them this year, I think this is Dame's best team. Without a doubt, I think this is Portland's best shot to win a championship. This is Damian Lillard's best team. They have wing defenders. They have bench depth. And I'm really, really high on the Blazers this season. I really am. Higher than most years. They added Robert Covington, Enes Kanter, Derrick Jones Jr., Harry Giles, and they only lost Trevor Ariza, Hazonia, Hassan Whiteside, and Wenyen Gabriel. So I don't think they lost anybody major. Terry Stotts is still there. They drafted C.J. Ellaby. And I mean, their lineup is ridiculously good. Dame, CJ, Covington, Melo, Nurkic. That can be the starting lineup. But I can also see them moving Covington to the 4, starting Rodney Hood or Gary Trent or Derrick Jones Jr., and having Carmelo come off the bench as your 6th man with Enes Kanter.
No, he said he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, and Anthony Simons. So, yeah, I mean, their bench is going to be one of the best benches in the league. When you got guys on your bench like Anthony Simons, Gary Trent, Rodney Hood, Kanter, Zach Collins. I mean, this team is ridiculously good and deep, and I think it's going to be one of the better Western Conference teams in the year this year. And I'm pretty sure they're a lock to make the playoffs.
This is the first time in a while that we can say Portland has a legitimate shot at making the WCF and possibly maybe sneaking up and making the finals. I mean, this team, they built a well-oriented team around Damian Lillard, and I think they finally got him to help. Aside from that year they went 3rd seed, I think they finally got him the help that he's so helplessly needed on the defensive end. And now you could throw out a lineup of Dame, CJ, Gary Trent, Robert Covington, Nurkic, or you can even throw out a lineup, like you said, of Dame, CJ, Rodney Hood, or Derrick Jones Jr. and Covington. I think Covington, Nurkic, Dame, and CJ spots are solidified in the starting lineup. And then you got Melo coming off the bench. You got Enes Kanter coming off the bench, and Fernie Simmons, who played really well down the stretch last year, who's going to be a good player coming off the bench. This is a good team that can go 10, 11 deep. And even Zach Collins is a good player. He got hurt last year, but he's still a good player that can play defense. So I like this team. I like what the coach did. He went all in, got some help for his superstar player, and now they have to put it on the table and they have to perform. Now, last time we seen this team with this expectations and got to the playoffs as the 3rd seed, they choked and lost in the first round to the 6th seed Pelicans. So it's going to be interesting to see now that they have the expectations, how are they going to perform? But I like Dame. I like them going forward, and I think they're going to finish top 3 to 5 in that area. I think they're that good.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that you guys are saying. I give them all the credit for what they went out and did this offseason. They addressed their needs. They fixed that defense that hurt them last year. And on top of that, the injury bug bit them really bad last year. So getting back healthy this season is a major key for them. And you got to hope they can stay healthy throughout the season. But you look at this lineup, I mean, they go 10 guys deep that you can really count on. Like, this is a great team. And I said a couple episodes ago that I thought they were a top 3 seed. I still see them in that range. I think they're a top 3 talented team in the West. Like, they can compete with those Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets teams, no question about it. But the thing that's changed for them, you guys hit on it a little bit. They've now gone, like the Denver Nuggets, from a lovable underdog where, you know, they hang around, and although they lose in the playoffs, everybody just writes it off because they don't have the talent to compete. I think this season is going to be like that flip of the switch where we saw from Dame last year. He's a bona fide superstar. There's no question around it. You know, there's no way around it. So I think this season, if they don't meet those expectations, people are going to start to sour on the Trailblazers, just like they would with the Nuggets. You know, they got to prove themselves eventually. And you know how the media is, how the fans are. Eventually you keep losing. It doesn't matter how much people like you. You're going to turn from the lovable losers to where are we performing? So I think this year is very important for the Trailblazers, very important for Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum to prove, yes, we deserve these labels that we've been given. And I like what they brought in. I love Robert Covington. I think he's going to really help that defensive unit while keeping that offense steady. Derrick Jones Jr. is another helpful wing off the bench. Enes Kanter gives you a nice backup center coming off the bench to help that offense. And just getting Nurkic back healthy is a huge plus. So I love what they did this offseason. I think they're going to be one of the top teams in the Western Conference.
Yo, side note, Kyrie just burned Sage at the Boston Celtics.
That's what I was laughing at before when we were starting this topic.
Yeah.
I was laughing.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with you. I just love this for Dame. Dame has been loyal to Portland and remains loyal and has not made it silent that he wants to be a Blazer for his entire career. I think regardless if they win or not, I don't think they'll turn into that team that people start to sour on. I think everybody will still love Dame. Everybody will still love the Blazers because even though their expectations are higher this year than a normal year, I think people still see the Lakers as the team to go out the West or the Clippers. I don't even think on a mainstream level, I don't think the Blazers are even picked as a third best team in the West. I think that goes to Denver. People are looking at Dallas before they look at Portland. There are teams that people are looking at that are not named Portland. I personally think it's a hot take to say they'll finish with the top 3 seed because even though their roster is great, I think people are hyping up the other teams in the Western Conference more than the Blazers. That being said, I think the Blazers finish with the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. I can see them finishing as high as 1 if the Lakers rest a lot, if the Clippers rest a lot, and I can see them finishing as low as 6 because the Western Conference, from the 3rd seed to the 6th seed, it's going to be like a 2 to 3 game gap. There isn't going to be much of a gap, so I can see them finishing as low as 6.
Yeah, I have them finishing at 3. I could see them as high as 1, but I can't see them much lower than 5 or 6. I mean, they really put together a great lineup this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like you're right, Joel. In terms of the this is why I love Pick a Side. We're underground warriors. In terms of the mainstream, them guys don't have a clue. Portland is a dangerous team, and that's why we're here for the underground guys to break it down for them. And I think Dame's loyalty to Portland rivals Steph Curry's loyalty to Golden State. I think those two guys are one of the few guys we have remaining, like Tim Duncans of the world and the Kobe's of the world, the Dirk Nowinski's of the world. Guys are going to probably stay with one team for a lifetime, and I think that's great for the sport. I think that's great for Portland, that they could keep being competitive and keeping that one guy, that one superstar in their franchise. And I think Dame's he's a Blazer for life, and that's dope. I have them finishing as a 3rd seed. I think they're going to get that high because that regular season they're going to be really good. Probably lowest I would say is 6th seed. I think they can 6th seed because it's just so dangerous in the West. I think their ceiling should definitely be WCF, and their floor should be 2nd round.
Let me ask before we move on, do you guys see them as a potential championship team?
I'm going to say this, scenario-wise. If the Clippers beat the Lakers in the 2nd round, I can see Portland beating the Clippers in the WCF and getting to the finals. But I think if the Clippers lose to the Lakers, I don't think Portland – I think they can give them a run for their money, but I don't think Portland can beat the Lakers. But I do see a scenario where if Clippers do win, that Portland can beat the Clippers, and then they go to the finals.
I don't know about winning it all.
No, I didn't say win it all.
Yeah. So that's what I'm answering. Like, I'm not sure if they can win it all because if you get matched up with the Nets, I think the Nets have more depth than the Blazers.
I think they'll beat them in 5. I think the Nets beat.
I think the Nets have more depth than the Blazers. I think they can beat Boston in the finals if they play them. Milwaukee, I think their length just puts them over the top.
They have Drew Holiday. It'll put a damage to Dame.
Like maybe the Heat, they can beat them. It's really weird, you know. It's really weird.
I like the Blazers, but their personnel, as good of a lineup as they've created, I don't think that they're built to compete with those elite teams. Like you look at the Lakers and how do they match up? Where do they guard Anthony Davis and LeBron? That was their biggest problem last year was, Gary Trent did a nice job on LeBron, but it wasn't enough and they didn't have anybody to guard Anthony Davis. So as much as I like Nurkic, I just don't think he's that guy to stop a guy like a Giannis or an Anthony Davis. So I don't know if they have the personnel to be a championship team, but I do think that they are going to be a top 3 or 4 team in the West.
I think scenario-wise, I can see them beating Miami in a 7-game series. I think it'll be a tough, rugged series. I can see them beating Boston in a 7-game series just for a lack of big man or a elite big man, I think Nurkic will definitely give Thompson and Tice some problems, and Dame is going to give what's his name, Kemba Walker, some serious problems. I think they can give Milwaukee a run for their money in a sense where Dame has learned from that Pelicans series, and when Drew Holiday was guarding him, I think he's a much better player than he was before than now. So I think they'll definitely, and they have wings that they can throw at anybody. So I think they're going to make that series competitive. But like I said, the scenario, if the Clippers do beat the Lakers before they see the Lakers, I can see Portland get into the finals.
So to summarize that, I think we can all agree, like just to give it easy language, I think they could be a championship team with help, but they are not a championship team that controls their own championship destiny.
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah, I guess along those lines, yeah.